Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We are having our first reports committee meeting of 2024, so welcome everybody. I am Natalie Arnold. I am from Lower Macungie Library. I'm the assistant director, and I serve as the SPARC Reports Committee chair. Today, our meeting, we are going to have a special presentation by Barb Mitchell. She is the county coordinator in the Cambria County Library System, and she's going to be going over data visualization. So after the presentation, if there's any other things we want to discuss, any questions anyone may have, or other issues to bring up, we'll do so then. So now I'm just going to hand it over to Barb.
Alrighty, well, thank you guys for joining us today. Thanks for the opportunity to present on this, Natalie and Elizabeth. It is a topic near and dear to my heart. This is a bit of an update from a poster session I did at PALA a couple years ago called Let the Numbers Do the Talking. I've changed a bit of my own personal perspective, and I hope you guys will enjoy. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And I'm going to go real crazy and share the whole screen and then start my presentation for you guys. So we're titling this today as Data for Communication, Turning Reports into Stories. I am the Cambria County coordinator for the library system. We have 14 libraries here in Cambria County, and I do help them with pulling information when they have questions. So it has turned me into a bit of a reports nerd. I'm also a grant writer, and I am a member of the PALA PR and Marketing Committee. So I do see different ways to apply storytelling and building an understanding for people who might not be the most familiar with the audience that you're working with. Especially with grant writing, you don't know who's reading the other side of the grant, so you kind of have to build a world for them without overloading them with too much information. And I found that data is a really great way to do that. I do have to tell you guys though, this isn't a data presentation. This is going to be a bit more about storytelling. I mean, we're going to have data, trust me, but I want to show you a bit on how to shape it into something more useful than just raw information for you. It is a really great tool for helping you market your library yourself and share the story. And I really do believe that the quantitative data supports the qualitative data. So if we have a really great anecdote about how our library works or how we're serving our community, we can find data and information to back that up. So storytelling with data, it really is show and tell. So we are going to show them numbers in the form of visualizations, things like charts, that sort of thing, and tell them how it connects to something more real. So storytelling is about connecting with people. In the grant writing world, they talk a lot about you got to pull the heartstrings before you pull the purse strings. And it really does depend on the audience. So the information and stories you share with municipalities and legislators might be phrased or packaged a little differently than donors or your staff or your board of directors. Overall, I have some good advice on using an active tone. So instead of the library serves the population of Cambria County, we can make it more active by saying Cambria County residents benefit from the library. You're focusing on who's getting that reward, not where the reward's coming from. We like to use urgency to stimulate a response. You know, you need to act now in order for us to serve this situation. Your gift now saves problems later. Creating a sense of urgency is really important when it comes to fundraising and even reaching out to municipalities and legislators. I just kind of coined the term the other day, you know, if you can't be sexy, be terrifying. So I'm trying to write a grant right now for a new data server, and there's no way to say that this server is going to make anybody's life better. It's not an exciting thing, but it can be a terrifying thing. It can be terrifying if the server goes down or gets hacked and suddenly all of our patron data is leaked. That can be very scary. So you can pull on the heartstrings in a couple different ways. But ultimately, you do want to have a strong call to action. When people read something that you're giving to them, or the email you're sending, they should know exactly what you want them to do afterwards. And one thing I always like to do is I'll hand off a document to one of my coworkers and say, what do you think this is asking you to do? And if they say, well, I don't really know, then you got some more work to do. But if they say, well, I got to give $100 or the library's shutting tomorrow, now you're kind of hitting the point. And it's important to tell a real story. Um, it can be hard, especially as business professionals, as people we want people to believe in and trust in. It can be hard for us to show weakness or emotion in certain story situations, but those emotions can be real. And when we take the moment to say, you know what, it's more important to tell this story than to come off academic, um, those kind of situations can really have a lot of impact. So these are the ways that we can bring an audience along with us. So I wanted to give you guys some examples of what I mean by all of this. So here are a couple ways to look at things. So if we tell a story that's library based, we could say the cost of books at Sample Public Library has increased in the last few years, and it's getting harder for us to buy new books. But if we make it more urgent and based on the stakeholder that we're telling the story to, we flip it and we make it about them. We need your help to buy great books. You can provide great books for young readers with your gift. Fundraisers these days almost have a good rule of thumb that for every one time you say us, you should be saying you 10 times. It's not about us, it's about you. You are the hero in this story, and I am the one you are rescuing. My library is the one you're rescuing. So if we put together the idea of keeping it stakeholder based and adding a story to it, though, here's what we get instead. Instead of we need your help, we get Charlie loves to read and visits the library every day. Your borough's funding means he has great books to foster his love of reading. You can help Sample Public Library offset the increase of cost of books by increasing the library millage. So here we're getting them invested in Charlie. They have an impact on Charlie, and they can be Charlie's hero here by increasing the millage. So now we can add data into this situation. If you look here on the right, I have a chart of the average retail costs of books between 2019 and 2023. This is based on data in my library. So what I did was I pulled reports from SPARC with the acquisition costs, which we always list at the retail price. And I averaged out the retail price of the books we bought in 2019. Then I took that average in 2020 and I said, okay, if I bought those same books in 2023 based on these averages, it would be $2.13 more per book. So when I put all of these elements together and put that stakeholder in here, put the story in here, and put the data in here, here's how it sounds now. Charlie loves to read and visits the library every day. He really loves dinosaur books. Since 2019, the average retail cost of books has gone up by $2.13 per book. To buy the same books this year would cost $12,000 more than in 2019. Sample County's millage is only 39 cents per resident, and we need that to change. A simple 50-cent increase to the millage means kids like Charlie will continue to have great books to read. Will you help us by making that increase? So now we're backing up what we're saying, that it's harder to buy books. Charlie needs books. Here's how much we need you to increase it, and here is why. And that's really how we put all this story together. as an example of how we might present something for a different audience, because I am very fundraising and grant oriented, but wanted to show you guys something based on my actual stats here at Cambria County Library. This might be a chart. This is actually from a selectors report we do every year to show our selectors how our books are circulating. So this is a story for my stakeholders. We've had a record year. Your hard work and excellent selection skills mean that our patrons have the best books, and it shows. In 2022, we had some of the best numbers in years. We even beat some of our checkouts in 2017 and 2018. Now, since I'm talking to my library staff here, it is very us oriented because this is something that we've done together. And so if you do look at this chart, we can see here, this thick maroon line is the one that we're really wanting people to see. And I have all the data down here, but you're not going to look at that. You're going to look at all these pretty colors up here, and you're going to say, wow, that red line is beating out a lot of the other lines. So it was really great to be able to report to our selectors, we've had the best year in a very long time, and we are seeing our rates rebounding and even doing better than they were during COVID. We use colors here to tell the story as well. So the older colors start on the red end of the rainbow spectrum, and then they get they progress towards the end of the rainbow the closer we get to the current year. So just by looking at this, you might not even need the key to say, okay, red's probably older, blue and purple are probably newer. So this is all when everything's nice and shiny and good. And when we have good data to support exactly what we need, things go really nice and smoothly. So what happens when the data doesn't match the narrative you're looking for? You usually come looking at data for a specific answer that you're looking for. You're just kind of trying to back it up. But you might find out it's wrong. So when you have data that doesn't match the story you're trying to tell, what you want to do is embrace the data that you do have. Bad data doesn't mean you don't have a narrative. It just means you have a different story to tell. So here at Cambria County Library, one of the things we rely on a lot is information on our technology stats. Everybody is very into broadband development right now. And I know we're going for the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority Community Facility Grant here soon. So I pulled this data to see how are our computers and Wi-Fi doing? Because I wanted to say we've got great Wi-Fi numbers, we've got great numbers of people using computers, and that's why you should invest in us. And I was really surprised to see that in the last 2 years, our computer use and our Wi-Fi use are going down. Not much. The Wi-Fi use is a little more than the computer use, but it did surprise me. And this data doesn't match the story I was trying to tell. So sometimes you got to sit with it, or maybe, talk with a coworker, and then you realize that sorry, I got a question from Elizabeth. I'll answer it here in just a second. So is our use going down? Yes. So what could that mean? It means that we might need faster internet and better promotion of our services. Could be impacted by the fact that our hotspot circulation has gone up. That's not something on the chart here, but we actually received a very generous grant through our city so that we don't have to charge a daily fee to use our hotspots. People just use a one-time rental fee and they have it for a whole month. So people might be opting to use our hotspot program instead of our in-place computers. We have also started circulating Chromebooks. So this one chart might not give us the story we're looking for. This one collection of data might not give us the story we're looking for, but maybe it gives us other opportunities. We might be able to go and say, hey, listen, we know people are coming to use us. We have regulars here every single day, but we're not seeing a lot of new people come in. We think we have a marketing problem. We think our computers are completely out of date because, frankly, they were. Our computers were from 2014 and they just got updated this year. So having newer computers and more modern technology, we might see a big jump this year. But based on the data we have now, that's not the story I could tell. So that's where things are currently. And yeah, Elizabeth, I do think it's because our equipment is aging. Our server is over 10 years old, and the average lifespan on those is 3 to 5. We do have a couple computers here still on Windows 7, which discontinued support in 2020. So there are things that we can't even do to update them right now. So yes, we are very actively seeking funding to support our new equipment because there is clearly a need for it. We also think that there are a couple other things to do with it. You know, we're going to be pulling out some of our general public computers and making a dedicated teen computer space. It could be that the people who need to use these computers are not the demographic that they used to be. And it could be that COVID did have an impact. It could be people who, you know, were putting off getting a computer, finally bit the bullet during COVID and did it. There are some things that I can't really say without like a really nice big study. But there are a lot of options that could be showing me what I'm actually trying to find out. Okay, so I lied again. It is kind of a data presentation. So I do want to get into some of the things I really enjoy doing with data and using it to establish these narratives. So these are the 5 steps to data visualization from a 5-step guide. I found it on the a health college page, but it was published through another library database. It was one of those things where they had shared it from some other source, and I couldn't find the original source, but I did like this information a lot. So step 1, be clear on the question. When you have a strong question you're trying to answer, you are going to get more refined reporting. You're going to use specific reports a little differently. Know your data and start with basic visualizations. So when you do have a better understanding of what you're expecting to see, you'll be able to know if something's wacky. Sometimes with Spark, you guys, you know, if you're building reports on your own, you might see sometimes, whoa, you know, this information is completely way off. And you might realize it's because of something like, oh, I was using my circulation library option instead of the owning library option. So when you're kind of familiar with what processes you already have, you know, if you know you're not checking out 1,000 books in a day and the report is saying you are, well, then you know that maybe something's not right and you need to reanalyze the report you're using. Identify messages of the visualization and generate the most informative. So what this one's saying here is that I might be able to make a 3D stacked, fully shaded, super fancy chart, but it might not serve the point of the visualization. We want to make sure that maps, you know, the charts and graphs that we're creating are readable, they make sense, and that the audience that you're looking at are going to understand them. And then choose the right chart type. Something where you're comparing things year over year isn't going to be right for a pie chart, which is showing you slices of the whole. And using color, size, scale, shapes, and labels will call out attention. So if we go back to this chart right here, I'm using color and shape to draw out the, you know, this maroon line. It's a little thicker than all the other ones. And I'm using it to say, hey, this is the one you really want to pay attention to. So that when it is kind of all crowded up here with the orange and the yellow and the green, it stands out so that we can really say, hey, this is the one piece of data we're really excited about. And sometimes it's okay, you know, sometimes you just want to develop things that look pretty. This chart right here is almost identical to the standard default colors that Microsoft Excel uses, but I changed just this one blue color from the gray that's usually built in there, and it just changes the total feel. It feels so much fresher and brighter than if it was this typical drab gray that you see in their defaults. So my personal process here, you know, these are the 5 steps that they talk about, but these are the kind of way I break it down. So again, we're going to have a clear question. That question might be, what is the day of the week where we check out the most number of books? Or how has our circulation of our public computers changed over the last 5 years? That way we're not just asking the world to give us a whole bunch of data and then we're just sitting there with a pile of it going, okay, none of these things really relate to each other and I don't know what to do with it. Then we're going to pull our data. There are, of course, many different sources, but since this is on Spark Reports, those are the ones I'm going to kind of focus on the most today. And then once you pull your data, you're going to review and interpret it. You don't want to just sit there and immediately go into charts, because if you don't really have a strong understanding of what that data is showing or how it's formatted, then the charts and graphs that you're going to put out later are not going to be very clean and clear for you. Next, you create your graphics and your visualization. Again, we want to keep that storytelling component in mind. When I'm presenting something to a municipality, or even better, a school district, if I'm presenting to a school district, I'm going to do what I can to relate it to their school colors, or my own library colors if I have them, because that's the best. I love, like, even looking at this screen here, this little graphic, most of the colors are represented in my library's logo. This medium blue and then this bright green. Those are very similar to my logo's colors, because then I don't have to think about colors to begin with. I already know which ones I like and I'm going to use, but then I can tie into other things. If I walk in and this presentation matches my sweater and matches the tote bag I bring in and matches the period, the other print materials that I'm bringing in, it feels very cohesive, and that helps speak to my expertise to this audience I'm talking to. So once you create your graphics, you create your infographic or your annual report, whatever you're doing, then you have to present it. It's never a good idea to just throw data at somebody, throw them a chart, and then not tell them the story you're talking to. It's an opportunity and an invitation for more dialogue. You can call out things that you've seen in the rest of the dialogue. Oh, Jimmy, you mentioned that you're from, Sample Public Library. Well, let me show you where they are on this chart. Bring people into this conversation as much as you can, instead of just throwing it at them and saying, well, what do you think? So then data sources. Again, Spark Reports, there's a lot of wonderful stuff in there. And then on the other side, I have some really great ones that I use all the time, like the quick facts from the census, as well as municipality population statistics from Pennsylvania. That can be really useful for doing things like showing per capita. I know right now in Pennsylvania, at the last conference, we talked about being able to show per capita what the county or the municipality are contributing. If the state is recommending a $5 local financial effort and the county is only giving you 39 cents, you can have that data and tell them very strongly, here's where you stand compared to the other municipalities. What do you think about it? Future Ready for School data is great for things like literacy numbers. Population health statistics are great because you can talk about obesity and disabilities, other sources like that. National School Lunch Program, that's something that comes up with E-rate and can be very helpful to say, we have 100% of our kids here are eligible for free school lunch. And that means we have a lot of families in need here, and why you need to support us. And then previous year's annual reports are something super great for libraries. We've already taken the time to pull that data. Let's use it as much as we can. Usually at the end of every annual report, I add to a spreadsheet I have of some key performance indicators, things like my active patron count, my total number of visitors, that sort of thing. I kind of keep them all as a running tally every year so that when I need to pull it, I have it all ready very quickly. So I like to think of it as diving, not drowning. You kind of start and you say, okay, I know what I hope to see, but let's start with some formatting. Let's convert things to a table. Let's present to ourselves this data and see what we're actually looking at, and asking ourselves questions about what do you want this information to tell you. That way you understand how to build from it. And I can't recommend enough, Excel calculations and formulas are the best thing in the world. I do have some of those towards the end of the presentation so that if this gets shared out, you guys will have some of those tips and tricks with you. So here's an example of what I mean about diving into the data instead of drowning in it. If we look at this first column here, this is, excuse me. This is how a report might come out of Excel, or when you export it to Excel from Spark. You know, this one is asking, all right, the question I had was how many items did we loan to libraries that aren't in my system? If anybody is looking at their interlibrary loan services right now, IDS shipping has gone up astronomically. So we were asking ourselves, how much are we actually shipping outside of our county? So I can see here from the raw data, it gives me everything in alphabetical order, but the number of circulations are all over the map and it's not very well formatted. So when I convert it over to a table, I now have these drop arrows that I can filter things. And I can say, okay, if I'm looking instead of alphabetical, I can look at the numerical ones. I can see here that Albright Memorial Library is a very heavy borrower of the collections in my system. And then it just works its way down. So it gives me a lot better context of how much my equipment's using. There is kind of a good hard cutoff here where you know, we go from 121 and then Lackawanna and down, Lackawanna County Children's Library and down, it gets to be very piecemeal and very individualistic. So sometimes just sorting by a table will tell us so much more information and tell it differently than if we're just looking at the raw data. And then here's an example of what you can do once you've got that data in something digestible. So if I took that raw data that we looked at without any sorting and then just immediately converted it to a table in Excel, we get a mess. We really, really, truly do. We have numbers on the inside in dark numbers against dark colors. We have these little call outs. We don't have any sort of key to tell us what's going on up here. We have a million different little slices. It's really messy. You show this to somebody, they're not going to know what you're looking at and what you want them to take away from it. Even with the key down here, I mean, I can barely tell the difference between like the Carbide Public Library versus the Pocono Mountain Public Library. Some of these color keys, it's just not working out. This as a raw table compared to that raw data is just a mess. But if we take some time with it and say, okay, what is the story we're looking at here? Maybe all of these slices aren't so necessary. Maybe what I can do is take these bottom ones, this 81 and down, and maybe I can total those up and just put them in another other section, because they don't really relate to the biggest things. You know, if my question is, who are the heaviest users of my system? Maybe these top 15 or so are a lot more useful than all those little ones and twos. So taking a moment to assess what data is going to be useful in your chart and then how to make it visually attractive can make a big difference. This is the same data, but if we take those times to adapt things, we might get something like this. And I will say, I made this one just for this presentation. I would probably not use all blues and greens. At least from a perspective of accessibility, because if you're colorblind, this chart is going to look very flat. But I didn't want to sit there and take an hour or so to pick out every individual color, which you can do, and in certain situations is appropriate, because again, this green from Library Express is very similar to this green from Valley Community Library, but overall, just for demonstrative purposes, it does pretty good. So what I did here is, instead of putting all the data right down at the bottom, I have it set up as a key. And by sorting it based on the size of the library, we start with the largest slice at Albright, and then we work around to the smallest one, and then that other section. So now we can see directly where these are impacted. We don't have anything sitting here in the middle where we can't read it because it's a dark color against a dark color. And then we have the key on the side as well. If I were to present with this, I would probably have a section underneath of it with the individual amounts. But for the sake of the story we're discussing here, we can see 21% of our books go out to Albright Memorial Library, and only 6% go to Taylor Community Library. This is answering the question we wanted to answer without it being visually confusing, without it being too much information. So here's a list of what all we changed on that one. So we adjusted the data to fit by taking, I actually calculated all the percentages and said anything that was less than 1% of the total circulation just got lumped into that other section. Then we sorted the data from most to least items. We changed the colors to match the presentation theme. And then we moved the legend so the chart could be larger. So instead of having it on the bottom, we brought it to the side. Then we adjusted the data labels to add a key and the name of the library. And we used percentages to contextualize things better than the raw number. And then we adjusted the data labels to be outside instead of adjust to fit. So adjust to fit is something that can be a default. And that's what happens here is it's adjusting to say, okay, it fits better here on the inside for this one, but it fits better on the outside for this number. So sometimes just turning that off just brings the letters in, or you can center them inside. You can add a background. There's a lot you can do to it to make it a lot more legible. And then last, I want to, well, maybe not last, but I want to talk about contextualizing. Sometimes it can be helpful to have more data to contextualize those changes that you're discussing, and sometimes it isn't. So on the left, we have here the graph from earlier, the average retail cost of books over that 5-year period. And I wanted to show, I thought maybe it would be great to show that the funding from this county has been flat the whole time, that, you know, the book costs are going up and up and up, and theirs is staying flat. But when I added that number in, because of the variations to these numbers and where the graph automatically adjusts to show them both, it doesn't look any good. It flattened them both out a whole lot, and it's not telling visually the story I want them to show. I want them to see that it's going up and up and up. But by changing the numbers on this graph to a section of 5 on each scale instead of these, you know, half points, it really flattened things out. It wasn't telling the story I wanted it to show. So there are other ways I can tell them, hey, you haven't changed this funding, but here's the graph that really makes you pop at how much the change has happened. So I'd like to give you guys a little live demo. Elizabeth, Natalie, are we on time that I could just show something real quick?
Yep, you're fine.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier, one of the questions was, do I check out more books on a Tuesday or a Saturday? Like, where are my numbers here? So I used this report that I built in Spark, and it is out there if you wanted to search for it and use it yourself. So I pulled this report with data from all 14 of the libraries in my county, and then I exported that to Excel. So here's my Excel spreadsheet. As you can see, I have some raw information here. It shows me each of my libraries, and then it has the checkout date and time, which, because it's using time based on how it's formatted in the database, it's going to start with 0 and then go up to 6. So 0 is going to be Sunday. Computers start at 0, so you don't count 1, 2, 3, 4. You count 0, 1, 2, 3. So Sunday is going to be 0 over here in this database. Monday is 1, Tuesday is 3, etc. So what I did is, instead of just looking at all this and trying to add it up each individual day that's a Sunday, I used a function over here. So what that function does, and I'm going to type it here, is I used SUMIF, which says add these numbers if they fit this criteria. So I said, let's summarize everything in the B column if everything in, or wait, okay, we're going to say, okay, if everything in the C column matches 4, we're going to summarize everything in the B column. And see how it lit up to show me which ones I'm talking about. This is kind of a short chart, but it can be really helpful. So following that, maybe I flipped it. Okay, I'm just going to copy from the one above. Okay. So let's summarize everything in the B column if, wait, this is hard to do live. I do apologize. Okay, so we're going to take everything in the B column. If it matches the letter 3, then we're going to add everything in the C column. But I'm going to change this to 4 because it's a Thursday. So, okay, so now I can see these are the total items added for Wednesday. Instead of going through and saying, okay, add this and this and this, because this is a really long list and it would be really hard to do that one by one. But I can make the computer do that for me. So again, it's going to be adding everything in this. If the condition in this column matches this number, then we're going to add this column, is how this works. And this is one of those things that you do have to practice a lot, but eventually you get really great at. So I'm going to add this one more time. And I actually use this one a lot because in Cloud Library, we have a little hiccup with our security where we don't have any. So I actually have to pull every patron's barcode and every circulation that they have, and then compare it to a list of every barcode I have for each different library. And I say, if this barcode is from this library, then add this number of circulation over here. And it used to be a 3-week process for me, and now it takes me about 3 minutes. That's the magic of practice and using a lot of Google to figure out how to make Excel do your bidding. But if I can do it, you can do it too. So right now I do have the total number of checkouts for each day of the week. It's not very helpful right now though, because again, it is raw data. I mean, we can look visually and see, okay, this one's probably the biggest, but I can actually use more formulas to figure it out for sure. So I'm just going to label these here as minimum and maximum, and then I can say use this minimum formula. And out of this range of numbers, tell me which one is the smallest. And then I can say use the maximum formula. And out of this range of numbers, tell me which one is the biggest. So that right there can tell me that, okay, this is the highest number of checkouts. And if I look up here, it looks like it's a Tuesday. I do actually check out a lot more books on a Tuesday than I do on a Saturday. And definitely a lot more than a Sunday. I only have 1 library out of 14 that's open on Sundays, so that's what I expect to see. But now we can make a little chart out of it. So I can just highlight this whole row of data and then come up to our insert column. And then now I have to decide which is the graph that is the most impactful. And there's an option here for recommended charts. And it'll show you what this looks like in different ways. So again, a pie chart might not be the best. It might be depending on the story you're trying to tell. If I'm showing you the whole week and how the percentages added per week, it might be all right. But I think visually seeing the checkouts in a bar graph might make the most sense here. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit create chart. And so now it creates this tidy little chart for me to show me visually exactly where my checkouts are. And I can really see, if I had to make a decision like, okay, our budgets are terrible, we have to cut one day of service a week to fix our hours or something, I might choose something like Friday because if I'm looking at the lowest one in the 5 day, 5 days in the week, Friday might be the one to go. Or if I'm trying to decide, well, I need to reallocate my staffing for when we have the heaviest amount of checkouts, I might say, okay, well, I need less people on Friday than I do on Tuesday. So this would be a very, very basic chart. What I can do to customize it is if I click in the chart and click just one, it's going to highlight all of the bars that I can edit at the same time. But maybe I just want to edit Tuesday because Tuesday's the most, and maybe I want to call attention to that. So I'm going to click on Tuesday and then right click, and I get more options, including format data point. Now it's going to bring up a bar for me on the side, a side menu. And if I click the little bucket, I get all these different options on how to style it. So maybe I do want to just change it to a brighter, more festive color. And maybe I want to point out that Sunday is the worst. Maybe I'll go with angry red for that. So now, just by a couple tweaks, I'm drawing your eye to the specific changes that I want you to see. These colors are standing out more than the other blue ones. So those are some very, very basic things you can do with a chart. One of my other favorite things is up here at the top, I can hit change chart type. So maybe the bar graph isn't doing it for me anymore. Or maybe I want to change it to a radar. And the radars can be kind of neat because they show everything as a central zero. I don't use them in real life often. The most I ever see these is in stats for Pokemon, where they might show that, the strength is really strong, but they're really weak on defense. But it's not something I use too much in real life just because it's kind of a complicated chart. Visually, it doesn't really tell a super great story. Like you don't look at this and go, oh, clearly Sunday's the loser here. But I could do it depending on what my chart making needs are. So that is how I would start making a chart. I would look at the raw data, convert it to something more readable, use some tools to standardize things. And maybe I even want to see what the average is. So now I could maybe use a total and then say, hey, Excel, add up all of these numbers together. And that gives me, out of the last year, this is the total number of checkouts I had in the whole year. And then I could use a calculation up here and say, hey, why don't you take this number of checkouts and see how many out of the total it was. And then I can even convert it to a percentage using my format tools. Sorry, some of the formatting from the Zoom call is impacting this as well, because the one menu bar is hiding one of my tools, but okay. Hold on one second here, because the video screen is messing things up. Okay, so now I can see that 2% of my checkouts occur on Sunday. And so I can even just lock this number and say, you're going to compare this for everything. And number locking is kind of a little more complex than I want to be. So if you have questions about that, let me know and explain. But now I can just drag that formula and now I can see, okay, 21% of my checkouts are going to be on a Tuesday, compared to only 12% on a Friday or 10% on a Saturday. So this is some of the ways that you can go through and interpret this data without having to sit there and do it all on your calculator. I don't expect everybody to super learn what I just did, but if you go through Excel and look on Google, there are all sorts of great ways to learn how to manipulate data and get it to tell you what you want. With Excel, it always seems to me like I go, there's got to be a way to do this. And you Google it enough and you will find a way. and usually with a very handy dandy YouTube tutorial at the same time. Before I bounce back to my PowerPoint presentation, does anybody have any questions directly on this Excel?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. All right, right back to it. So here are now, we're in the home stretch, guys. Here are now a bunch of the tips and tricks that I use for Excel. So on the desktop, you can just use Control and T to convert things to a table. It's a lifesaver because it automatically reads everything in what it thinks is a table and says, is this what you want? And you say yes. So you don't have to like highlight the data and drag it all down to tell it what you want to be a table. I've added in some of my favorite formulas that have been very, very helpful in my life. And then one thing I do want to talk about is calculating a percentage change. Sometimes that can be very useful. If I'm looking over 2 years of data, I can calculate and say, okay, in 2023, we increased our children book checkout by 12%. The formula for doing that is listed here. You subtract the old number from the new number, divide it by the old number, and then multiply it by 100. I actually use this, and it's complicated enough for my brain that I actually have a Post-it note on the wall for helping me remember it. But here it is in this handy dandy PowerPoint presentation for you. One other thing that trips me up a lot is that when you use a formula, when I'm using one of those calculations and saying, add this all up here, if you try to take that number and then paste it somewhere else, it's going to paste the formula unless you tell it not to. So using this copy values, where it says this little 1, 2, 3, when you're trying to paste something, using that will paste it more accurately. And then you'll get the numbers instead of just the raw information. Much more helpful. And then changing the angle of a pie chart or changing what data isn't shown. Let me show you guys that real quick here. So if I make this chart into a pie chart, I'm going to hit insert and then go to pie chart. So right now, if you look at this little pie chart, it's a little messy. Maybe I want to tighten up where these slices start. What I might mean by that is that we can tell it, oh, I've lost my spot already, 1 second. See, there's a reason I put this on the PowerPoint. I knew I'd forget to do it myself. Okay. Format data series and then angle of slice. Okay, so I'm going to go to format data series. Okay, and then here, because I clicked on this whole circle and then click down to format data series, this angle of slice is going to change the angle from the very first slice of this pie. So I can get it to rotate and change where I want it to go. So if I want to call out the Cambria County Library, which is this, or if Friday is the one that I want to highlight the most, I can call it out. So it's the very first one in the top right corner. Or maybe I want to call out the fact that, maybe I want this little slice to be on the bottom. I can adjust it however I want to help with that storytelling element that I'm going for. So it's just a little trick. It's something that I like to do to make it feel a little more polished than just spitting out this raw data. And then I can even change some of the data that's included on here. So if I click on this little funnel, maybe instead of showing the whole 7 days a week, maybe I just want to see Monday to Friday. Instead of having to come around and mess with this original chart and change all the data and then rebuild a chart, I can just come in here and deselect the ones that I don't want to see. And then I can hit the apply button. And now it shows me Monday through Friday, which days are calculated based on what I'm showing. So it's still showing me Friday is the slowest day and that Tuesday is the biggest, but without the distraction of those other elements, which can be helpful. Again, if you're doing something with like a whole bunch of different smaller levels of data, you can just go in and deselect the ones you don't want to see. There's a lot of variables that you can mess with here, and it takes a lot to learn. I'm not an expert. I'm just an enthusiastic novice, and I'm doing my best, and you can too. So those are some tips and tricks in Excel itself. And then I do have on this PowerPoint as well some links to some of the previously mentioned resources, as well as Flourish is a data visualization tool. It's really amazing. It is way overpowered for what I will ever use it for, but it can do some amazing things. And it's free, which is the best part. I learned about it at PALA last year, and I've been really diving into it. I also have GoSkills.com's Ultimate Guide to Excel Charts, as well as Microsoft Support's overview of Excel tables. So those are some really helpful tools that have helped me along the way and made me a little better at this sort of thing. So that's the end. Again, if you guys ever have any questions, you can contact me. I do have my information here. I think Natalie will probably be so kind as to send this out to the report committee as well. So you'll be able to have these as well. If not, email me and I'll be happy to send you the information and also help you if you have any questions.
That was great. Thank you so much, Barb. There's a number of Excel's always, lots of stuff in there that I use a little bit of tips and some formulas, but I definitely learned a number of more of them. So thank you. Great.
And Excel is everybody's private individual journey. Like the tips and tricks are probably totally different from the ones I have. So like if you ever want to like compare notes, I'm always here for it. But Excel is my passion.
Does anyone else have any questions for Barb?
I don't have any questions, but thank you so much. I like Excel a lot as well, and I learned a lot more about the possibilities from this presentation. So thank you.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I do truly appreciate it.
Let's see. Are there any other questions or issues anyone wanted to bring up regarding reports for Spark? No. I know the annual report is coming up soon.
Yep. I just wanted to share that we'll be doing our folders again of templates for everyone, and I'll be looking through the documentation and making sure if anything changed that those will reflect changes. But so far, I think we're in a good place, and we'll be able to release the templates pretty timely after the info has been shared. So we'll be on the lookout for those info sessions, and let us know if you have any questions.
I did have a question. We started resource sharing with Adams County this year, and I guess I'm not sure what kind of reports we would need to run to be able to get those statistics.
Yep, you can use the ILL ones because these are considered ILL, anything in between the systems. And I have 2 templates in there. There'll be questions 10 and 11. And mine counts copy transit. So I think Barb's demonstration counted circulation. We count transits. So, even if the thing didn't get checked out at the library, that was its destination, it will get counted.
That's a really good point, Elizabeth. I might be adjusting that this year now that you put that out. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
We did actually, there was some concern with us last year about like, does it double count? Like, we share within our county. Are we double counting if we count it here as what, like, if I'm sending it to one of my county libraries, versus sending it to Lackawanna County. Like, should they all count as resource sharing? And they did write back, yes, it does. If it left your library, it counts as resource sharing. So that was very helpful for us.
Yeah, as long as you're in a federated system. If you're in a consolidated system, they don't count because they're technically all your items.
Yeah, it's more like a
So
branch.
yeah, there are more branches. So when we go over the templates, I'll make sure to highlight the fact that 10 and questions 10 and 11 are for resource sharing libraries. And then you'll use your access PA and numbers and such. You'll have to like add a couple sets of numbers up to get your ILLs for the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I am a data nerd. This is my favorite time of the year. Like, let's get into it. Let's pull those reports. I'm here for it. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, but you know, it's a good kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I'm with you. So thank you for joining us, Barb. This was really great.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Now that I'm getting the reminders, because I don't know how I got on that digest version, but I'm hoping to be a much more regular presence in all of your lives.
All right. The only thing I just wanted to mention was the next meeting for the reports committee will be the annual users group meeting. That'll be in March. So other than that, anyone else have anything? Okay. Well, thank you again, Barb, for your awesome presentation, and thanks everybody for joining, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.